Christians have done and continue to do the loudest politically. And so I want Christians to understand their call to boldly, loudly, and joyfully declare that transgender to be who they know themselves to be. And that we do that work, and we work for justice for all people, not in spite of our faith, but because of our faith. And then maybe not ever, but then certainly in my lifetime, and my child's lifetime, we will, let me speak to this some in Kathy and Celeste, but we've had the most horrific year. I mean, I think everyone in this room probably knows that, as far as young people are the ones being the most attacked at this moment. And I don't mean to start us off on a downer, but the next. So it is more important than ever that we equip people to not only understand their call to do this work, but with the resources to know how to do it. And I think my publisher would say the primary audience for this book is parents and families and people who care about young people. It is my deep hope and the experience young people, whether as a faith leader, as an adult in the world, as a teacher, an educator, is reading over their shoulders to understand support and create spaces where all people can thrive. Because that's the thing, this work isn't just about trans and non-binary. When we break down the systems of oppression and power that hurt these kids, we are creating space for all people to. And it's important to name that we can't do that work without also dismantling all systems of power and oppression. In this work, we need to address and racism and homophobia and transphobia and all of these layers. And so that just needs to be said over and over again. Work as a white woman who feels really uncomfortable with that box. That's one of the reasons that, those pronouns of she and they feel great to me, but I am a cisgender human navigating the world. And so it was really important to me that the book be informed by trans voices, but also be bookended with the foreword by Senator Sarah McBride and the afterword by my daughter, Rebecca, who read every single word and got veto power and also approval to every single word. It was one of my delights, I think, in the writing process, was when I was able to hand her a draft and say to her up in her room as she giggled or said, "Oh my gosh, you said that," and not in a way that was like, "Oh, you're divulging my secrets," but no, "Dang, Mom, you said the thing." And I was like, okay, I'm doing an okay job. If the 16-year-old is saying that, then I'm on the right track. And so I'm going to read just a short snippet, 2 paragraphs, and then I'm going to introduce my conversation partners. A lot of post-it notes. Let's see which I end up reading. Okay, we'll start here. This was baptism by fire as far as parenting went, and it taught us some very important lessons early on. Everyone wanted to tell us what our kid needed: family, neighbors, and they were wrong every time. The only thing that got our little family of 3 through was getting to know this baby, listening to her and trusting her to show us the next right thing to do. That was the foundation of our parenting. Knew herself better than we could ever know her. better than any book or parenting expert could know her, and our job was to listen and follow her lead. So we did. An early walker and an early talker. She climbed on everything and explored everywhere. She was the kind of kid who broke her arm at 15 months old. Use her arm or put any weight on it. He sent us for an x-ray just before offices closed on Friday. It was broken. Of course, it was now Friday night, every parent's favorite time for a medical emergency. She looked at us kindly, if a little condescendingly, and said, "Oh, don't worry, they're both." We handed her the x-ray. Parents like we do children. We assume we know so much more than they do, and that teaches them to doubt themselves. If there was one thing I could offer to new parents, it would not necessarily be a piece of advice, but maybe an affirmation. You know yourself. You know your baby. Together you will get to know each other even more. Get quiet, listen, trust yourself and trust them. Humans who are loved, supported, heard, and allowed to lead themselves don't end up spoiled. They end up deeply grounded and beautifully empowered. That will carry you from infancy through the teenage years, or at least it has carried us this far. In many ways, that's what this book is about. Beyond our ideas of gender diversity and identity, this is about learning how to raise children who are able to step into the fullness of who God created them to be every step of the way. And I think, if we're lucky, along the way we raise ourselves into being able to do the same. And so with that, I would like to, thank you. Introduce my two wonderful conversation partners, and I'm so grateful for you both for being here. Kathy Renna brings over 30 years of experience in media relations as communications director and as the principal of Target Q and LGBTQ plus focused strategic communications, playing a central role in shaping nearly all major issues affecting the LGBTQ community. From the beating death of Matthew Shepard in 1998, she worked with the team that coordinated historic coverage for World Pride, Stonewall 50, working with NYC Pride. Kathy is currently teaching as an adjunct professor at Relations and Communication Strategies for LGBTQ plus equity and advocacy. Most recently, she was profiled in Forbes Women as a queer PR icon. Kathy lives in lovable cat Winston, and she's the proud mom of Mars. You knew I had to include that. And Celeste Fiore works as an LGBTQ educator, activist, and advocate. And their work began when they were an undergraduate student at American University in Washington, D.C. Celeste led American University's LGBTQ undergraduate organization and was later the co-president of Outlaws, the LGBTQ law student group. Doctorate. They practiced various types of law, most recently through Argentino Fiore Law and Advocacy, a trauma-informed LGBTQIA plus focused family law firm of which helped secure families of all shapes and sizes, as well as privacy and name changes for transgender and non-binary folks through published cases. In 2020, Celeste helped found the Trans Affirming Alliance, a New Jersey nonprofit, and is the chair. As one of few out non-binary transgender attorneys in New Jersey, they have been a leader on these issues regardless of their professional practice area. Celeste holds a number of appointed positions that allow them to wide levels and regularly presents on and writes about LGBTQ issues. I can tell you that these two are far fancier and far more educated than I am, and so I'm
Hi, how's everybody doing tonight? Can you hear me? Good? that bio just makes me feel old and tired. But
it never gets weirder to hear your bio
it totally,
read aloud.
just like,
it's the
I
worst.
scrunch up.
It's kind of fun to do it to other people because I feel like people do it to me all the time.
Oof. Well, between the two of us, Celeste, right?
Yeah.
We've been doing this stuff a long time. You know, as someone who, and I use pronouns she and her, but who, as I joke with my students, obviously have dealt with, you know, or as my Italian family says, maschietto, which is actually my favorite. I'm going to use that as my pronoun from now on. You know, this is a really important book because this is a really important issue because these are our kids. And I think, you know, the conversation that we can have, not just amongst the three of us, but with all of you, is that this is a time where we need to be asking parents, teachers, therapists, activists, people within the LGBT community who need to own things and do better as much as anyone. I'm a faith work director and one of the few national organizations that really has faith as a primary pillar of our work. And even she said this is the first of its. You know, I'm just super thrilled to be here and have this conversation.
Yeah, thank you. And as somebody, you know, you asked and polled the audience how many of us are parents, and, you know, I turned around and there were so many of us. Opportunity for somebody who has been queer their entire lives and has been very aware of it for all of my life, to be able to parent who's not a parent like me, who might be approaching their transgender or gender creative child with less of that personal understanding, less of that I have literally walked in your shoes, and more of I see the shoes that you are walking in, and I know adults who have walked in those shoes, and I love you, and I'm trying to understand and do better. And the value of that perspective and the power is going to help propel us through these next 15 months, but also the voices, frankly, that need to be the most empowered. As you can imagine, when I walk into a room as a very openly and obviously trans person, my pronouns are they and them. I could hide by being binary, but that wouldn't be who I am. Oftentimes when I start talking about kids and what's important to them, I can see the eyes glaze over and the brain shut down. Own lived experience and what could I possibly know. And I guess the reason why I wanted to sit here next to Jamie on this panel is to say to Jamie, well, listen, you're telling them the things that I wanted to tell them. I'm going to keep whispering to you, and you can use your voice. But I know that I've taken up some time, but I think it's really important for me to look out at this audience and say to you, your voices and subjects matter to kids, they matter to adults, and they matter to the people who are sitting in the seats of power that think that nobody else cares except for the people who look like me. So thank you, Jamie. Like I'm privileged to be sitting here, but I also believe in what you're doing wholeheartedly.
Yes.
Thanks.
All the applause. Yeah, I think that's a really one of the important things in what you said is that we, as parents who are not coming from this lived experience, have the power to use our voices if Celeste here whispering things into my ear so that I am saying the right things, the things that need to be said. And that's true, like, the biggest gift in her and know her and the joy that that's been, but second to that has been the trans and non-binary adults that have come into our lives and not only in relationship with Rebecca, but in relationship with all of us, have shared themselves in a way that we never deserved, that I never deserved, and have taught me so. And so I would just say keep listening, and not just to folks like me who are using that voice, but to the people we're learning from.
adults or the older trans. It wasn't role model. It's something
Oh,
else.
possibility models.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I love the concept of possibility models. Role models are like, I feel like role models are what's supposed to like tell you what you're supposed to do. Possibility models show you what's possible. And so when we talk about like the power of representation, when we talk about being able to see ourselves represented in the world around us, it's great to have that mirror to know, but also has so many of those, both those public options. You know, Senator Sarah McBride has been a really important one to both Rebecca and our family, that we've been able to be in relationship in a very public sphere. But then
She's an AU alum, by the way, American University.
Yes.
Once an Eagle, always an Eagle. Go Eagles. That's all.
I love it. That's on our college. But yeah, and so like from her work first as press secretary for the Human Rights Campaign, and then as the first out transgender senator for
U.S. Senate.
U.S. Senate. Thank you. I don't know why I couldn't come up with that. She's very public, but it's also those people in community. It's the people. The people that were in community that are possibility models for the life that they can have. And that's important. Yeah.
So, I don't want to be a downer, but, you know, Jamie alluded a little bit to the current climate, and that's another reason why this book could not come along at a better time. It was, what, like, was it a week ago, 2 weeks ago? We were on a panel together. We do this a lot. For the National LGBTQ Journalists Association. So there were several hundred journalists in the audience, and I moderated, and I didn't really have to moderate because there were extraordinary people like Jamie on the panel. And that's, as you alluded to. And you know, let's frame this in like literally what happened today. So today there was supposed to be a hearing of the Judiciary Committee on Capitol Hill about trans-affirming care for young people. That was not what they were calling it. That was not people who supported that were not the folks testifying, and it was actually Marjorie Taylor Greene. I'm going to try and be really calm and nice as I say these names and things, but the Children's Innocent Protection Act, like, I mean, just director explained all of that Schoolhouse Rock stuff to me this morning. But the challenge is that, you know, as journalists often ask me, well, you know, there was that legislation, but it didn't pass. Because for a while, those pieces of legislation at the state level, particularly anti-trans, trans-affirming healthcare bills, were not passing. Now they are passing. But they were saying, oh, but the misinformation, the hate, the climate of hate that is created by the folks who are introducing this kind of legislation is what has an impact no matter whether it passes or not. And so this couldn't come at a better time because we are so challenged, and our young people and adults in the queer community feel at risk. One of our fellow panelists is a theologian, a non-binary theologian, who literally, because they were being threatened by the Proud Boys and others, and just, you know, being in the public eye has become a very different kind of thing. I've spent 30 years helping people tell their stories, how that happens, but I have never seen anything like what we're dealing with now, particularly dealing with trans and non-binary folks, adults and young people, you know, who have families who are supportive, who are willing to share their stories. So one of the, I think, really interesting things in the book, and you talk about it a bit, is what that's like, what that experience is like, the responsibility, and then, you know, the challenges that come along with that. So, and I met Rebecca when she was at the Jersey City protest with the sign, and then went viral. So it's, you know, I've watched this from the beginning. It's really amazing. So can you talk about that a little?
Yeah, for sure. So, so first, I mean, to experiencing, we have families across the country who are having to leave everything, their families, sometimes their other children, in order to move to states where they are safe. They are refugees in our own country. And those are the families that are able to scrape, families that are still in those states, fighting to figure out how to keep their kids safe in a world that is banning their health care. They're evidence-based. Every major medical association in the United States supports this care. Banning their health care, making their schools completely unsafe, even more so than they already were, and making it so that they can't live in their communities. And so we sit here in New Jersey, where we have a lot of privilege. We also have a significant responsibility. We have a pretty significant coming up in the next few years, this year included. We can't take for granted where we are in New Jersey, and we have a responsibility. It's one of the reasons that my family, because of the privilege we have as a white family, as Rebecca has two supportive parents that are highly educated, support she needs. She fits into the gender boxes that society gives her. When she navigates the world, people don't perceive her as trans. So there are layers and layers of privilege. And so because of that, we've been willing to do this really public work. At the same time, our voices can't be the only one of immense privilege. That doesn't mean it's not hard. With this work has come significant hate. I will tell you, all the death threats we've received in this work have been for a second. The harassment, the hate, our poor church administrative person gets all sorts of phone calls. And when we get packages in the mail, we've been reported for child abuse and had to defend, my child had to defend her identity to the state and say, this is who I am. And so it's not that, despite the immense privilege we have, this has not been sunshine and rainbows. And so like Rebecca's experience and her story, first of all, she drives this, everything. And yet she is being forced, and has been since she was 10, to make decisions that no 10-year-old should have to pick up and regret having been so public, possibly. We've done the best we can with the resources we have. And so we keep putting ourselves out there, because right now in this moment, it is really hard out there. And so there's an added responsibility to those of us that are public, that are already out there, to continue doing that work and lifting up the stories and the experience. Aside, we get the attention and then point to a story that is not ours, that is not as cookie cutter as ours looks. That's the other thing, is that we don't share everything. Many of things we have kept for ourselves, we have kept for Rebecca. I think sometimes parents and people who care about trans young people want to vomit all the intimate that their identities are valid, that they deserve respect and support. And that's not, you don't need to do that, and we need to protect our kids from that happening. Sort of that.
No, I mean, absolutely. And that's what I always think, is I think about all the families that for many, many reasons can't tell their stories because it's not safe. And dealing was like the way we were dealing with, in many ways, gay and lesbian issues 30 years ago, 25 years ago, where people would want to use a pseudonym, and journalists would say, well, that's really not okay, because, people aren't. In fact, they still can in 29 states, right? So I think that, the courage of doing that, but also understanding, the boundaries and protecting your kids and protecting yourself. Celeste talk a little bit about sort of what the legal sort of climate is here in New Jersey and how it differs from other places?
Sure. And this is one of those times I'm super proud to be a New Jerseyan. And right now we have an attorney general who is that's a political appointment, who is actively litigating, and now it's the Division of Civil Rights that actually brought an administrative case. So what's going on is to get a temporary injunction to tell the Hanover Board of Education that they need to just pump their brakes, don't be withdrawing any transgender student guidance, don't go changing your policies because DCR has done an investigation, they filed a complaint, they're saying that the reason for them wanting to change their policies was specifically targeting trans kids, and it was going to have a disparate impact on trans kids. I can tell nodding along have completely glazed over already. And if I were talking to a room full of attorneys, that would be the same result. So what's unfortunate about what's going on right now legally in this landscape is that it's really, really confusing. It is for lawyers. It's confusing for people that haven't been part of this fight and trying to advance rights for trans people. And to be fair, most of us who are trans have not families or in a medical environment that wasn't doing something other than pathologizing us. So I kind of put that out there to say that while it seems like the trans rights movement and doing it on the ground right now, that is not the case. There has been a robust trans rights and trans liberation movement in and Marsha P. Johnson, but those two were already organizing. They were already doing work. We had ballroom culture that were keeping our kids alive. So you may be asking, you may be wondering, Celeste, didn't Kathy say something about the legal landscape? And part of it is that the legal landscape is formed and crafted because of the culture that we have in this state. So since 2009, gender identity and gender expression have been protected under our New Jersey law against discrimination. Full stop. Places of public accommodations, you can't discriminate against somebody on the basis of their gender, gender identity, gender expression, and a whole host of other things too. So if you're in New Jersey, you are generally speaking, if you want to use whatever bathroom you want to use in the Wawa, you can use it. If you are kicked out of that bathroom, go online, file a complaint with the Division of Civil Rights, please. Because the more you talk about it, the more then they know, oh, these issues are happening even in our great and wonderful state, which has all of these protections. So also at the same time, we have trans kids being used as political fodder. And I spotted a guy in a suit, in a blue suit, and I thought, wow, I should have worn my blue suit because he's pretending to be a lawyer, but I actually am one. So, speaking about the legal stuff, he just didn't have a clue. But he was up there trying to talk during the open public comment period that wasn't designated for the right thing, and he was saying all of the talking points that are contrary to the New Jersey law against discrimination, like, boys, if whatever sex you're assigned at birth, that's your gender identity, not so. So all of these things are being put out there, but what it's doing is that it's shifting what New Jerseyans already know. So we are starting to believe that we are not protected here. We're starting to believe that when, in every season, every legislative season, bills that are going to pop up that are going to be looking to take away rights, or there's going to be these school boards that are trying to take away protections. Ultimately, I'm not the judge deciding any of these cases, nor am I the fact finder, but do I know that the law against discrimination protects us in New Jersey? Yes, but tell your friends that. So if they're experiencing, or you're hearing through your parents' groups that their kid's not allowed to use the bathroom, or they're being told to go to the nurse's office, just say, I heard a lawyer talk, I don't think that's right, let's look it up. I mean, but really, we are the first line of defense to dispel some of the myths and what is the parlance that is happening right now, because we're not being left out to dry, and we certainly aren't being left
I think that's so important because I think what we see right now is because what's happening at school board levels in these instances where people are experiencing harm that is against the law is harmful, and it's elevating a narrative. And so we want to mobilize against that while being really clear about what's at stake and what the law is and what's happening. And I even see this from some of our advocacy orgs and folks that are trying to propel things forward. You know, they need to raise funds, and to make people feel really scared about what's happening as far as their rights, that's a way to do it. And so just being really equipped to understand that, yes, we need to mobilize in this moment, and we need to educate and be active advocates and show out in support in these instances. It's not the alarm, like it needs to be based in facts.
As we're dealing with young people, I mean, and adults as well. Don't put this on social media, it's not public, but the theme for our Creating Change conference, which is coming up, I should put some cards back there, is queer power, queer action, queer joy. You know, and we can't just pick one, right? And be, you know, I think that it's absolutely agree with both of you. I want to switch gears a little bit. I mean, one of the things that you talk about in terms of the stories you tell in the book about parenting and the challenges of parenting and being really honest about, you know, sometimes it's you don't know what you're doing. As a parent myself, I can say the same thing. And I work with the Family Acceptance Project, which is this amazing project out of San Francisco State University. Dr. Caitlin Ryan runs it. As a person and as a parent, frankly. And you know, one of the really interesting lessons that comes out of her research that struck me several times in the book is that as a parent, you want to protect your kid, right? That's usually like your first priority, or should be. But sometimes that protection can land on your child. I could probably tell some personal stories about that, but can you talk about that a little bit? Because I feel like that's an aha moment for so many parents of queer kids.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, Dr. Caitlin Ryan's work is so important. It's referenced in the book multiple places and as a resource in the back. Initial reactions, first of all, in general, initial reactions are probably not where you want to stay. In like most things, like when you first, like sit with that initial reaction. I don't care whether it's parenting or with news or in like whatever it is, like pause, take a breath, and then look at what the next reaction is. And so I think sometimes when we learn from our children that there is something about them that is going to make their life harder, where they are going to face all the yucky stuff in the world, whether that's bullying, whether that's discrimination, whether that's whatever that is, we want to say, no, 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 don't be that. But they're not the problem. The world is the problem. Like, we look at all the statistics of what, and this goes for queer people of all ages, face in the world, whether that's anxiety, depression, suicidality, whether that's discrimination in housing and jobs and all of these things. And people can easily look at that and go, wow, there must just be something wrong with them. But queer people, LGBTQ people, trans and non-binary people, and young people do not struggle because there's something wrong with them. They struggle because of what they face in society. And rejecting them in an effort to protect them from that, we see that when young people experience efforts to change their gender identity or sexual orientation, it doubles their suicide rate. And so that's why it's our job to change the world.
Okay, everybody go.
You have homework, okay? There's homework.
And I say that, and I understand that's like a big impossible thing, but I'm not kidding. Y'all, that's what we have to do. Don't put it on your kid. Love them. They are good. They are right. They know themselves. They are not the problem. Like, it's not, hi, it's me, I'm the, well, it is, hi, it's me, I'm the problem. It's us, we're the problem, it's not them. And so we need to change the world for them. And that's what I hope everyone just keeps trying to do.
Of what you're talking about, because I think that's what really makes the light bulb go on over people's heads. So we recently had a staff retreat. I work at organizations in the universe, and yet we're constantly thinking about when we're not. Facilitator who does all kinds of work around diversity training, but also organizational, all that kind of stuff. And we were talking about anti-Blackness, we were talking about transphobia, we were talking about misogyny, we were talking about racism. And she talked about how she even will react and experience these things. And she said something that I'm 60 years old and I can still learn shit, you know? She said, it's the soil we grow up in for all of us. So I'm completely unable to be sexist sometimes, you know? Of this sort of concept and how this really works in real life is my mom, who sadly is no longer with us. She was like a badass mama bear. And for years, I would get my hair cut, and she would say, that'll look great when it grows in. And I would say, this is the point. Like, I want it, like, this is actually kind of long for me. I was saying I needed a haircut, and I didn't have time on the way here. And years later, this, old sat at her kitchen table with me crying because I think she read maybe some of Caitlin's stuff. I don't know. Something happened. And she said, I am so sorry. I am so sorry because I was just protesting your industry. And I worry that someone's going to see you and target you because of who you are, how you look, and what you do. And I'm so sorry because what I should have said was, what can I do to help you feel safer? What can I do to protect you? So when your kid comes down, emo, teenage, queer daughter, you're going to wear that to school? Or you're going to wear that out to the punk shows, whatever. She wear whatever the hell she wants. But like, to have what that child is feeling as they walk back up the stairs is the opposite of what you want to be doing, right? For all of us. And I mean, some of the examples in the book are really phenomenal, if you want to share one.
I would, but I'm also aware that we're running out of time. Questions that you all want to ask. We have a microphone up here if you're willing to and able, or we can bring the mic to you as well. Thank you so much.
Phil Donahue would be proud. Who remembers that?
Check, check. Okay. So my name is Patience Moore, and I'm a therapist for kids starting at first grade through adults. And the